All right, we're recording. Hooray!
All right, welcome.
You sound fake excited. Are you?
I'm so excited.
Fake excited.
I just can't hide it.
Welcome to Thoughts on Talks, where we share our thoughts on the talks that Reverend Mike McMorrow gave on Sunday here at Centers for Spiritual Living in Granada Hills.
Which is a scary thought in itself.
There are many thoughts, and it's okay if some are scary. We're here with you.
Yes.
So yesterday was February 9th.
Smiling more because I don't want to have resting bitch face.
Have you been watching back and finding that that's what you thought?
Yeah, well, I'm very conscious of body image now that I
Oh my gosh, you look
yesterday.
so creepy. Don't do that anymore.
I look like a jib jab.
Kinda, yeah. Or one of those possessed puppets from horror. No.
Here's what I usually look like.
No, it isn't at all. That's like a grouper face, though. Like a fish.
Yeah.
Yesterday was February 9th, 2020.
Garrett all day, by the way. Go ahead.
So if you want to see the actual talk, you can go to CSLGH, go to our YouTube channel, CSL Granada Hills. You can watch the archived live stream of the talk. But today, there were many slides and many pages of the Sunday talk that Reverend Mike prepared but didn't get to because he went off on a tangent, which I like because it's in the moment, and I think it's it's letting spirit, move through you while you're talking. So now we get to find out what he intended to talk about, or at least what spirit was moving through him when he wrote the talk. Right? So the title, I'm barely keeping your interest. I don't know if I'm keeping anybody else's.
I'm just thinking, I forget what it was I said yesterday. Okay, go ahead.
It was titled, "The Body is Not an Apology."
Yes.
And the theme was, all bodies are beautiful.
Yeah. God
is present in all bodies. But that's not what you really ended up talking about, because I think one of the things you were connecting was that February is the month of love, and that it's also Black History Month.
Correct.
And so basically you were talking about loving people no matter what their skin color is, and kind of got stuck on that outer appearance thing, even though you had more written about all of us learning to love our own bodies. You kind of touched on it, but you had slides that we never saw. And
well, I'll tell you what happened was I went to see Tim Weiss at the American Jewish University.
Okay. Or
maybe it's Jewish American, I can't remember.
Okay.
It's up at the top of Topo in Simi Valley, and a great venue for a great speaker. And he was, he speaks as a white Southerner about privilege, and really had a lot of history in it, and boy, it was like drinking from a fire hose for 45 minutes.
Wow.
And so
that's what had you all inspired and fired
that's
up.
what, yeah.
Okay.
Because it really was, the CSL version was speaking to more the body image struggle, and then throwing skin color in also. And I made it more about skin color and then tagged in the body image at the end, because I felt like I was really challenging our congregation and anyone who's going to listen to that talk, who happens to be a white person, to spend more than a cursory glance, considering the way that the door has been made open,
right,
just because we have white skin. And so many people hate hearing about white privilege.
Well, and I think it's one of those things that we can't see it until something shows it to us. So we can only try to imagine ourselves in the position of,
yeah, exactly.
And I'm looking up a picture that I took in Target, and it was for books for specifically for African American kids to learn to love who they are. But it was all so completely new thought affirmations. And I'm just trying to figure out if I should show it to you from my phone or Facebook, but it was basically, you are loved just as you are. Just several really affirmative things. And I walked in and I saw that. And even though that wasn't aimed at me, I felt better having that affirmation. I've also had the experience of being the one with a different skin color in a country that isn't my own, in the case of me living overseas in Sri Lanka, where everybody has a nice, deep, rich color of brown skin. And even if I would see a fair-skinned person walking among the crowd, my eye would be drawn because that person looks different.
Sure.
I also had the experience of being maybe one of very few light-skinned people in a shopping mall and having everybody's head turn and everybody kind of look at me a little longer than I felt was comfortable or normal. Yeah, I mean, they can't tell if I'm European or what country I'm from. I'm just a white person or a light person.
By looking at you.
As long as I don't open my mouth, nobody knows, but the accent gives it away.
You look Scandinavian for sure.
Oh, no. But it could be mixed.
Wait, I'm really good at this.
Yeah, you're spot on.
German.
I could have
See, that's how I mix that up because, Scandinavian, German,
neighbors.
Well, there was a lot of pillaging going on back in the day.
Okay. Anyway, so having the experience of people looking at me, I tried to convince myself this is how celebrities feel when people recognize them walking around. So I would try to like it more than I did, but it was uncomfortable to have people looking at me just because of the color of my skin. And on my side, most of the people who would looked at me as a person of privilege. I would be the strange white person who many of them assume is wealthy because I've traveled there. So it wouldn't be suspicion when they looked at me. It would just be noticing something different. So to be in a situation, I did have, there are some shopkeepers there who I don't know if it's a cultural thing, it happened a lot, where you go into the shop, they actually follow you from rack to rack. And they're just standing there watching you shop, which makes Westerners feel like we're suspicious.
Who was on the rack?
Clothes.
Alta!
No, it wasn't like that. It was clothing stores.
All right.
But it does make you feel like, why are you following me and why are you watching me? And I'm just shopping. Leave me alone to shop. But that wasn't how they were taught to do customer service.
So do you think, did you ever feel discriminated against?
I almost was always, I don't know if it counts as discrimination, but if they treated me differently, I was almost always treated more positively. Right. And the people with me, because it was assumed that my light skin meant I had foreign money to spend in their country. Or at least that's how I figured it out.
I found that folks are usually very friendly to tourists. I don't know about Sri Lanka, but
yeah, I mean, there was a smile, certainly, for me, and they were generous, but the first response was to look at somebody who's different.
Sure.
So that's the slightest understanding that I can draw from in trying to understand what it's like to have your difference visible on the outside. So no matter where you go, that's the basis of judgment that people have.
Right.
And
of course we have this culture within the United States, of course, that's a lot different.
Yes.
And very loaded.
Yeah, we have a different history here in the US. But that also, I'm going to tie it back to the parts of yesterday's talk that you didn't get to, which is that we, being in the society that we are, where our appearance is how people kind of size us up. And that's like caveman stuff. we're always looking for how to figure out if we're safe and what we can get in a glance, what kind of information we can get. So that's old programming in our brains that we can't necessarily undo.
Pronto,
but we've switched it to becoming overly critical of ourselves because we compare ourselves to others and to an ideal sort of appearance in the media or, advertisement, magazines, all of that. So that the experience that we end up having is beating ourselves up.
Well, we can, unless, I don't know what it, it would be interesting to be, 6'2", athletic, incredibly handsome, to some, like Tom Brady, say.
Okay.
Right? Do you know who Tom Brady is?
No, I don't.
All right. Let's see. Brad Pitt.
He's not that tall.
No, but he's a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you saw Brad Pitt, even if he wasn't a movie star, you go, wow, there's a good-looking guy.
Probably, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would think there's a privilege to that.
Yes.
Right? Being,
and
I'd like to say I know something about that, but nope.
Well, we don't know the privilege we have, right? Because that's the whole point of it, that
that's
we're
why
blind to it.
Yeah, that's why we're clueless, because of the comparing.
Yes.
Is that where you're heading with this?
I don't know where I'm
Well,
heading
because
with
there's
it.
always someone up the ladder from
Right.
us, right?
Or that we think is, because we've made a judgment that whatever they have is better, however they look is better.
But even when you are on the top of the heap,
There's
sometimes you can be a mindless, amoral jerk.
Yes.
And say really stupid things without even thinking about it.
I'm sure
and
that
people
happens.
Clap while you do it.
Yeah. And I think
Not
that's...
that I know anyone like that.
No, can't imagine. But I think that's part of being treated a certain way throughout your whole life. You have this expectation that of course, this is how it works. The greatest ever of everything. In that case, yeah. So let's see if we can do a screen share and share some of the slides that we didn't see. If I can figure out where the share button is. Oh, it's the really obvious one right in the center. Okay. So here's one. Body expresses intelligence. It's apparent intelligence being lent by the consciousness which permeates it. The physical body is evolved for the purpose of allowing consciousness to function on this plane. And that's from Science of the Mind. Do you want to say something about that? Should we go to the next slide? Are you looking up something to add on your phone?
Yeah, I was just thinking that we might invite
another
Sherry
person into the conversation
to join us while we're on it, just because next week you and Sherry may do this. And I might join you.
Okay. Well, we would have to...
So we can experiment.
Yeah, we would have to send her the link.
Yes.
And I kind of don't want to interrupt as well.
No, I'm going to do it from my phone.
Oh, you are so on top of things. So I'll just move to the next slide, I think, while you're doing that. Oh, it's up here.
Yeah, so that's from Ernest Holmes, from the textbook.
There we go. You want to read that one? Oh, no, you're texting it.
The human body at peace with itself is more precious than the rarest gem. Cherish your body. It is yours this one time only. The human form is won with difficulty. It is easy to lose. So it turns out this guy,
Tsongkhapa is how I would...
Tsongkhapa, yeah. So he says, you can see there, a 13th, 14th century philosopher in the Buddhist tradition, a Tibetan Buddhist. And some Buddhists take issue with the idea that the Buddha would have said that the body is precious.
Really?
Because that would be an attachment. Right?
Well, so, can you appreciate it without being attached to it? I think you can.
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm just saying that so this guy is popular. But, Buddhism also has its
issues.
The more accepted teachers within it.
As every religion does, and path. The concepts like self-acceptance and body neutrality are not without value. Mm-hmm. When you've spent your entire life at war with your body, these models offer a truce. But you can have more than a ceasefire. You can have radical self-love because you are already radical self-love. That is a radical quote.
Really, man, it's so radical.
It's so radical.
Like, whoa, it's so radical.
But
people used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
Radical, dude.
Which made it not so radical at all.
But I think a lot of people yesterday could relate to being at war with their body.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, I think the obvious one is that women often think, mm-hmm. that they're the only ones who are subjected to that, but men get caught up in it too, right? So
yeah, because men,
virility and body type, and then in aging, right? So we see some young guys acting like jackasses, and in your 30s you'd have got in there and say, "Hey, jerk, what are you doing?" And now you're like, in your 60s, you're like,
maybe I'll just
look at that young guy being a dumbass like I used to be.
Oh.
But, sometimes I have challenged
people who needed to be challenged.
Yeah. And I'll say, look, I know I'm an old guy here, but, I know your mom raised you better than that.
Well, and that may be a better approach than trying to get in there and assert.
It's not as satisfying,
though. Okay. So this quote I really like.
It doesn't work out well.
Oh, okay. See, that's a man thing. That's right. This quote I love. And I said to my body softly, I want to be your friend. It took a long breath and replied, I have been waiting my whole life for this. And that's by Naira Wahid, which sounds like a Muslim name. If not, then certainly maybe a Middle Eastern name. But I love the quote because our bodies are...
out my name, and I know
oh my goodness.
Wherever I am, I'll come
You're
running.
in the mini screen now. We have to have that full screen. Oh no, it's not going back. Oh man. But I love this quote. I put a little heart, see, on my notes because it's so good. Another thing that you did get to in saying some of the things. Oh, here's an affirmation. That's important. I don't want to skip that. My body, exactly as it is a perfect and glorious instrument of the divine. I take pride in and revel in the glory that is my body now.
Yes.
Wow.
Please pass the cookies.
I want to send myself this slide. I'm gonna after we're done with this talk. So now I'm going to try to get back to the other screen. Oops, that didn't work. How do I do it? Unshare. Stop share. There we go. Hello. One of the quotes that you did say that we must not let ourselves become discouraged, but rather remember that there is that within us which has never been violated in any way. That is big for me. As a woman who feels like I'm in constant threat of being violated, I did more when I was younger, but
really?
Yeah.
In what way?
I'm always hyper vigilantly aware of any men who are nearby, what they're doing, which way they're looking, their facial expressions, how dark it is, how many other people are on the street or in the parking lot or in the shop, that kind of
but not like when you're just walking
safety.
Around.
If I'm walking somewhere that I feel safe, then I'm not necessarily as concerned. But if I'm in a random parking lot or someplace I haven't been before, I'll make sure I'm parking my car under a light. I'll make sure I'm not putting myself in between two vehicles where nobody can see me. It's something, and most women have had an experience where somebody has crossed a line and violated them in some way, whether physically or emotionally or spiritually or mentally. I feel certain that pretty much every woman can relate to the sense of feeling violated. And to know that there is something within us that has never been violated, that is pure, is really moving to me.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that did get said in yesterday's talk.
So I've just invited Sherry Gideons to join us if she's around.
Okay.
So, yeah, that is when we think about the idea of God being everywhere present. Because I know even when I say things like that, I'm saying it into a room knowing that someone has in fact been violated, perhaps violently so.
Yeah.
Right? If not, not necessarily, sexually, but, if anyone's ever been held up, right, or robbed, or even sexually harassed on the job, or, or a seduction that's gone awry, and,
even if
things have to be.
When our homes have been broken into, that's a violation. Even if somebody has gone through our desk or, that kind of thing, it's a violation of safety, of boundaries.
Right.
And so, especially in those cases, to be able to go within and connect to something within ourselves that is inviolable, I think is the word. It's never been violated.
Because to me, it seems like you have to be able to heal whatever that transgression has been in order to be able to move beyond it.
I'm going to check the microphone right now. It says it's not working properly. And but it seems to be working properly. So we will continue on as if it's working. I just thought I'd check.
Well, I could join the meeting on my phone and we could find out. Okay.
Well, we'll carry on. I just noticed the light isn't on the microphone that I plugged in. So
did I unplug it?
No, I don't think so. See, that's the fun of technology, and it happens in the middle of a conversation.
Well, this will pick it up anyway, right?
Yeah, it should. Maybe we should move closer.
Oh, I'm well lit now.
Oh, very good. And probably could be heard very well, too.
So, yeah.
So I think you left off in your talk around page 8. And I underlined some stuff that I hadn't heard, that I don't remember hearing anyway. We have somehow chosen to incarnate at this particular time in...
Yeah, I did say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in this way, the entire universe is the body of the divine, all bodies. So I just kind of, the picture in my head went from universe into my body. It was a nice vision. All bodies are beautiful. God is present in all bodies.
Yeah, that was actually written by one of the ministerial students who prepped the notes. I don't know which one, but...
They don't put their names on them, huh?
They might, but I didn't look.
Okay.
I just stole it.
It can be challenging because modern media presents the body, as it presents many aspects of life, as something flawed and in need of fixing.
Yeah.
We in Science of Mind believe that each of us are perfect, complete, and whole exactly as we are.
Yeah.
The body is not something to be apologized for or excused, but rather something celebrated for its beauty, its power, and ability to house the infinite in this plane so that we may experience it.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying hearing your talk read to you?
Well,
Is it weird?
Well, and I'm just thinking about other things around body image and the things that we think about, and culturally. So I'll tell you what I was thinking about for males, right?
Okay.
Because that's what I know best. But most of the, you look at any fashion magazine and, I'm surprised women eat anything at all.
And those are
right?
photoshopped so heavily.
Well,
they're not even real.
Not only are they photoshopped, but if there's 7 billion people on the planet, then there are like maybe 1,000 in 7 billion who have that kind of body type.
Right.
Because I understand when I read a little bit about, they're not like crazy about what they're eating and stuff. They're just kind of, this is naturally the way their body is.
Some of them
just hate them for that.
Work really hard.
So I mean, they exercise and they eat sensibly, right?
Maybe. I mean,
you
that's not the stories I've heard, though.
Yeah, it sounds like they're slogging back the cocktails and doing the whole thing, right? But at any rate, but then you have the ones who are bulimic and all that other stuff
and starving themselves.
But I was thinking from the male perspective of how we get into judging ourselves because, in the beginning, it's all about fun, right? T-ball.
Okay.
Right? Everybody hits, you put the ball on the tee and you're basically learning your positions. But eventually, when you get into middle school and certainly high school, there's only so many slots for so many kids, and so the first thing is you have to make the team, right? And so I don't know how they do it now, but in the old days, they would just pin it up on the bulletin board in the locker room.
Okay.
And you get to check and see if you were on it or not, right? Then the next cut comes at, who starts and who rides the bench, right?
Okay.
So.
And that's just in the organized part.
That's just in the organized part.
That's not the social, scrambling to find your group and where you're accepted. And
that's just in one small little niche if you had an interest in being part of a team. And I was lucky that I went to a small school, so I was able to play a sport like football, which frankly, in looking back on it, I had no business playing. But
so my translation of that would be auditioning to be in shows, because I would be on stage singing, acting, doing all of that. So we would have the audition, and then they'd pin up who was placed in what role.
Well, yeah, or I dated someone who was an actress and a commercial actress, and tagged along because, of course, for whatever reason in that ridiculous business, they can't figure out who they want to put, not to give a job to, but to put on a veil until 5 o'clock on Friday across town.
What?
For the callback.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, but what I'm getting at is I'm watching these people, just put it all out there. I mean, really a lot harder than an athlete. Right? Because now everybody's going through the motions together, and then some are on the board and some are not. But, you're selling, shampoo or something, and, you got to get in there and do it, And thank you, next.
Right. There's a whole series of things that go into selecting somebody to be a spokesmodel or something, which as somebody auditioning, you can take it very personally when you're not
very
selected.
Dismissive.
Yeah.
Right. So
but
there's
you're being treated as a commodity.
Right. Because they're like, okay, no blondes, no. And that's not ethnic enough, too ethnic,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
it's really,
it's a weird
business, man.
And it doesn't encourage really anybody to be in touch with themselves and the reality of their own bodies and appreciating it, because they're trying to sell you on their product by selling you an ideal for you to aspire to. They're creating a want in you to get that so that you can be that. And it's all false.
Well, not only that, but if you look at like television shows where that have teens, well, they're not teens. They're young
Often
adults.
They're not, yeah.
Right? So they're like in their 20s.
Often. And when they're not.
And they're supposed to be 17, and then the 30-year-olds are in their 20s. And so, someone who's supposed to be 30 and they're actually only 22.
Right.
And so we're thinking, oh, gee,
Yeah, they look great for their age.
Right. And this one is like somebody's mom. Somebody's playing their mom, and they're only 35.
Yeah, actually, I met an actress who told me just that story. Like, there wasn't enough of an age difference between her and the person who was playing her daughter. But they could,
But it also
TV,
skews, right? So we have this thing on youth worship. I don't know how we're getting off on this, but when you see people who are supposed to be in parental roles, who don't look like our parents looked, they just don't. So number one, they're incredibly good looking, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be on there, except for maybe Steve Bamucci or whatever his name is.
I don't know.
Anyway.
So
he's like an everyman character.
Okay.
He's a good actor, though.
Okay. To go back to the notes, to rein it all back in, through gently supporting and listening to our bodies, our body can be a vehicle not only for our souls to navigate the world, but also for our continued spiritual evolution. Yeah. As we make peace with ourselves, then we make peace with all of life. That's a pretty big promise. It sounds
because
great.
So long as we feel fulfilled in here, then we really can't be moved off of our center,
right? We won't be so bothered if somebody comes at us and says, oh, and here's an example that I heard in one workshop that I did. If somebody comes to you and says, "You're a blue frog," well, you're not a blue frog, and that doesn't trigger anything in you because you've never been afraid of being thought of as a blue frog. So you go, oh, okay, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Tell me more. Or you just dismiss it, but it doesn't affect you.
Crazy?
Right. But if somebody comes up to you and says something to you that you have been afraid might be true about yourself, then it triggers something in you, and then you react or hopefully respond. But most of us have some kind of emotional response to that.
Yeah, and I think that's why, taking it back to the stuff I was talking about, I think that's why it's difficult to have a conversation about racism with people of color, because we're afraid. We're afraid to know, we're afraid to find out what's really in here.
So we're afraid to be called out? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
So because this stuff's really deep. So the one story I didn't share from Tim Weiss, he was talking about his grandmother, who was both his grandparents he really looked up to growing up, and that his home life was really kind of crazy. So he would go there regularly. So it's nice. My grandparents were not in the same town I grew up in, so it sounded kind of nice. And so he would go there, and his grandmother was one of these really impressive women who was very adamant about the rights of, she just would not tolerate racism of any kind. And there was a family story around that, because her father, his grandfather, was a Klansman. And she went to him at age 16, and she gave him two choices. You can either, because she'd fallen in love with a Jewish boy. Okay. And they wanted to get married, because you did back in those days, right? So she went to her father and she said, look, I want to marry this boy, and I'm going to give you two choices. Mm-hmm. You can either take your robe and your hood out of the closet and take it to the front yard and burn it, or I can take it out of the closet.
Wow.
And burn it. And so, to her grandfather's credit, he took it out to the front yard publicly and burnt it.
Wow.
And they never looked back. But this was the kind of commitment that she had to addressing race.
Pretty strong.
So, so she went through her years, and then she came down with Alzheimer's. And of course, on one hand, Alzheimer's can be a blessing for the person in that the memories get gentler, and you tend to remember, you can forget a lot of unpleasant things as well as remembering things. Like your last memories to go are like of your childhood, which are often idyllic. But the downside is that they can also become abusive. Right. And can lash out and thrash out physically. Mm-hmm. And which that is what happened to his grandmother. And they say for Alzheimer's patients that the last memory to go is the first one and the most embedded one in the memory.
In the psyche.
And so here she was, this lifelong outspoken person speaking up for people for African American people and everything that went on with that. And now her caretakers are all African American, and now she's calling them this name that everyone knows.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Because there was the breaks were no longer in there.
Yeah, the personality that had developed from that.
Well, and Tim's point is that even knowing what she knew, mm-hmm. and the way that she lived her entire life as an advocate for equality, mm-hmm. that this had been downloaded in her because she grew up in the South.
Wow.
Right? And so this is what he was saying, that these things that are within the psyche, and we all have them. Right? So I was talking to one of our African American members, and she said, yeah, I have my own biases around race. Mm-hmm. Right? And then, not with white people, but also within their own race. So there's
a line
it's a crazy...
Is it South Pacific that says you have to be carefully taught? And it's about racism, of course, against Asian people in the South Pacific in the musical. And you have to be carefully taught to hate, because when you see two children playing, they don't care what color, they see a child.
Right.
One of the other things about bias that I saw at work when I lived overseas in Sri Lanka and through my travels, and it connects to a friend of mine who works in justice, in criminal justice. Mm-hmm. And he once sent me a test to help us be aware of biases. But what I noticed there is something I noticed in Sri Lanka, that it's often not the skin color or the race that we're responding to, it's the class. So it depended on, in this test that he gave me, the photograph of the person. Are you afraid? Are you, what is your thought about this person? If the person was maybe dirty and disheveled, or if their clothes were somehow like, all black with a black hoodie or something, hoodie. There are different things that we're responding to, and it's not just skin color, and it's also the environment. So, one person approaching me on a sunny day in the Sprouts parking lot in Granada Hills might not be threatening, but if I were in a dark parking lot downtown,
or Canoga Park,
it's just
you
the
don't
context.
Have to go downtown, but yeah.
Right, yeah, the context has a lot to do with it as well. So there are many levels of information processing going on, and it's important for us to look at all of those things.
That's smart, though. See, I mean, part of that is just smart. I mean, I don't walk around at night stupidly, and I always have my key
ready,
strategically placed just in case. And you know, looking around and being mindful. And well, I think at night you're probably wary of any stranger. But but those are kind of the more obvious ways that bias can show up. But I think your examples might be better, right? So the idea of being in the market,
right,
and being followed around or what have you. So, right. Or you know, you know, when police show up, when law enforcement shows up, right? So, you know,
even though they're in a uniform,
as an old white guy, you know, I don't have anything to fear that way, right?
Right. And so, they're probably not approaching you with the same stance or facial expression that they would.
Suspicion.
Yeah, right. Somebody of color. I
have
friends.
I didn't have to take my freaking shoes and belt off at the airport. Just saying. But anyway.
Yeah, sometimes I haven't had to. But I have friends of color who have
one guy. Can we just, before we move on, one guy wears shoes into the airport.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on. Speaking of being downloaded with a bunch of fear-mongering crap.
Right. And
just saying.
His smile. So, going back to radical self-love.
TSA.
Can you go back to the song that you sang that you were petting yourself?
Maybe Greenwood could redo that. Instead of USA, change it to TSA.
I think you should write to him immediately.
Yeah, probably would.
But we're going to go back to radical self-love right now. And
maybe Weird Al's already done one.
You know, Randy Rainbow is who I would recommend. Okay, you guys all have to check out Randy Rainbow. I was invited by a friend to go see him performing live at the Wiltern Saturday night.
Oh, this is a real guy.
He's a real guy. He does song parodies, mostly about politics and mostly about our current president. But they're so cleverly done and so funny and really spot on as far as I can see. But he hasn't always done just political. He's been doing this for years and years. So he has lots of videos on YouTube. Just search for Randy Rainbow and you'll see. Right. So he was doing songs from Beauty and the Beast and Wicked and Hamilton. And he does one.
Does he play keyboard or something?
He sings, but he does music videos. So he does really well-produced videos where he inserts himself as a reporter and interviews somebody.
Like Borat?
Not exactly, because Borat, I think, actually interviews the people and then makes them react somehow.
Right.
These are after the fact. He edits the footage that's actual news footage and then puts himself in there and puts the little, thing at the bottom that says what the topic is, but then he breaks into song and all the words show up on the bottom. So he might do a nice TSA parody for you.
I'll check that out.
Yeah, investigate.
Did you ever see that Borat movie? I actually walked out.
I did. It was hard to sit through.
When you had that joke going with the cockroaches and the Jews and all that.
I blocked most of it out. I think
I got up and I said, this is freaking stupid.
His point is to challenge people. And that one of the things he did was go to a Southern family's home as a foreigner and really push buttons and other really gross things. Yeah. So back to the topic at hand. As we make peace with ourselves, then we make peace with all of life. And that's what we all want. Peace.
I wonder if I wrote that.
I wonder. How can we find out? It's on page 9.
Yeah, I think
you
I
want to
may
look?
have.
Okay. Well, it's good.
Well, let me know.
I have a bracket around it.
1 line of 50.
I'm sure most of these are yours. You've done
the
11 pages.
I know.
Yeah.
It was a bit much.
Yeah.
And I really didn't go into what I had written much, I don't think, until, I don't know, later into the talk. But
well, everybody can now go back. After watching this, they can go back to the talk and compare and see what.
The body image thing, though, is interesting,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it is an interesting angle to come at this idea of bias, because when you are honest about the body image stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I think most, you know, you don't have to be a deep thinker to understand that we have biases against, you know, obese people,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And then certainly we all have a self image that we are comparing ourselves, you know, where we think what we think we should look like.
Right.
Right. And some of that may be determined by the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But oftentimes it's just like, you know, like I'm going through this thing, like I was saying yesterday, around aging.
Mm.
Right. So I managed to kind of keep everything together up until, you know, now it's like, wow, okay. So I'm going to need more than affirmations going forward. I'm going to need to get my butt into the gym.
Mm.
And I'm going, you know, because before, I'm one of those people who I couldn't eat whatever I wanted, but I didn't have to watch everything I ate.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about the making peace with our body as a vehicle is, you know, even with cars, they have wear and tear. Mm-hmm. They have, you know, when they're older models, they may not work as efficiently as newer models with newer equipment.
Well, and the other part is, you know, in my position, you know, went from doing pastoral care mm-hmm. and just watching people as they age, and also within my own family, you know, there's just this, you know, I have had members in my family who are like eating handfuls of pills all day long. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. That I definitely don't want. Yeah. Right. Because it like starts with the cholesterol. Here's a pill. Oh, your blood pressure. Here's a pill. Oh, whatever. Yeah. And I just really am wanting to avoid that mm-hmm. At all costs. And so at every phase of our lives, we have to find new ways to relate to our own bodies, our own self-image. There's probably a big chunk of like from late teens to 30 where there's not a ton of change and we feel like we're at our best, hopefully. But then slowly things start changing. Eyesight changes at like, I don't know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there are things that I didn't even know I couldn't see until you couldn't see. I was putting up a piece of crown molding up on the ceiling, and the homeowners watching me, you know, try and figure out how much I was going to shave to get it to fit right. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sitting up there and I'm trying to measure and doing these other things. And he said, "Here, try these." And he handed me his reading glasses. And I put them on, and it was like, oh my God. I didn't know I couldn't see. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because it never occurred to me that, you know. Yeah, I had stopped wearing, I needed glasses for distance when I was in my 20s and going to college and looking at blackboards or, you know, whiteboards or whatever. And so I stopped when I was in Sri Lanka because it's so humid all the time. I didn't want them on my face. Yeah. And then when I moved back to the States, I started, you know, then I was in my 40s. And so I thought, you know, I can't see so well. I'd like to not squint when I'm driving, especially places I didn't know and I had to read the freeway signs. So yeah, when I got my new glasses, I was like, oh, everything's so clear. Yeah, well, with me, it's close up. So, okay. In fact, somebody said, oh, you got the old people text. The old people type that.
Because it's a bit bigger.
Does that look really super big to you?
It doesn't look super big, but it's big. It's bigger than what I have. I think I put my dad's on the biggest, and then he was like, "What is this? It's too big. Make it smaller."
Yeah. I mean, I can read it, but it's fuzzy. Sucks.
Oh, and there he's donning the specs.
And there.
So, okay, here's a quote that you didn't write yourself while you watch the magic trick of Reverend Mike playing with his glasses. The living intelligence through the Big Bang, impressing itself in, through, and as all matter, coalescing into atoms, elements, heavenly bodies, biology, until at last its consciousness coalesced itself within the mind of, oh, that's the wrong page, ... Hold, till I find the next page. They're all out of order. Within the mind of man, which I'll call humanity. In this way, the entire universe is the body of the divine, all bodies. Oh, it's the beginning of that quote I tried to read earlier. I just had the pages out of order. Go figure. It's nice.
Yeah, our pal, Reverend Steve Rambo over at Simi Valley.
Mm-hmm.
He and Johanna and I went to check out Tim Weiss.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so what's your approach tomorrow? And he was, yeah, so the body of God is the body of each one of us. I'm like,
oh, that's good.
Good one. I'm going to steal that, Stevie.
So I think we've covered all the slides that people may have missed. Mm-hmm. We can go
Except
back.
For Half Dome.
That's right, because people saw that. So
that's all they saw yesterday.
I'm going to see if I can go back to. I'll share that. Here's Half Dome. Let's see if it'll show it now. There it is. Where's Half Dome?
Yosemite.
Yosemite. So here's the affirmation that we can close with to wrap up from what the talk was titled. The body is not an apology.
Myself the way I am. There's nothing I need to change. Remember that? That's like an old religious science hymn.
No, I don't know it. Would you like to continue?
No, that's all.
Okay.
I always thought it was a weird song.
It is, well, maybe it's only the way you're singing it. So the theme, all bodies are beautiful, God is present in all bodies, and the closing affirmation for everybody's illumination. My body, exactly as it is a perfect and glorious instrument of the divine. I take pride in and revel in the glory that is my body now.
Yes. Amen.
Amen. And so it is, and amen. And now I will stop the share. And I think, I guess Sherry Gideons isn't joining us.
I guess not.
So perhaps we'll see she and I next week, because you're going to be away.
Well, maybe if we can work
coordinate
it out.
Where are you going to be?
I am going to be in Denver at the Centers for Spiritual Living Convention.
Ooh.
And I'm not sure what's going on Monday afternoon. Okay. So.
Yeah, we'll see what we can put together. Maybe you can zoom in for a little bit from your phone and chat with Sherry and I, or,
I'll pop in and say hi.
But you'll be here Sunday for your Sunday talk. Yes, so if you're not able to zoom in, Sherry and I will both talk about you and your Sunday talk.
Yeah, I like what she's done with the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm, me too. And, we've been announcing on Sundays for everybody to subscribe, but we also want you to invite your friends and family to subscribe.
Yes.
And share it on social media, and, promote whatever you think is awesome and cool and you want to share with other people. Share the whole YouTube channel, because we have a whole bunch of stuff. Thoughts on talks, as well as the Sunday talks, as well as practitioners, just their segments of the creative thought from Sunday services. There's a playlist for, did I say Flourish already? There's a Flourish playlist of the of the episodes from last year.
Speaking of flourish, you're
starting
be
up
flourishing
again
next week, right?
Yes, the 19th.
And you
third
have
Wednesday.
a workshop on Thursday? Is that this week?
Yes, that is this Thursday, the workshop with VNU. The Lunch and Learn workshop is creating space, whether it's for more love in your life, on the theme of love in February, or actual physical space in your environment.
Whether, so that's February 13th.
Yes, it is. This upcoming Thursday.
The day before Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that's when people feel pressure. What is it that you call Valentine's Day?
The national holiday of unrealized expectations.
So then people feel pressure and they might want to start clearing space in their life, in their energetic fields and in their,
I was
schedules.
Sharing with someone back when I was doing the online dating thing, in the Yahoo personal era. I think this was before Match, maybe. Anyway, I was trying to do this thing because I'd always heard of, it's best to date more than one person, because I had always dated one person at a time.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I was trying to do this, and I got to tell you, it was taxing.
I would imagine.
I'm glad I tried it. I'm glad I did it. And Valentine's Day hit. And I kind of freaked out and just ghosted everybody because I didn't know what to do.
So as you see, friends, Reverend Mike McMorrow is human.
I'm one of those been there, done that kind of guys.
Yes.
So anyway, you're welcome to leave a comment on ghosting people you're dating if you like.
on really anything that we said.
Yeah.
And please.
Because you can do comments, right, on the YouTube channel?
Yeah, you can.
So we welcome those.
And
please be kind.
Yeah, and if you think that you know somebody in your circle of friends who doesn't feel comfortable coming to a kind of traditional church environment, but likes to think about these kind of philosophical thoughts and wants to hear it in more of a conversational form, this may be something that you can share with them and then continue the conversation, on your own.
Over coffee.
So.
Or Jell-O shooters, whichever.
Okay.
Do people still do that?
I don't know what people do. I don't do it.
You don't?
No, I got really sick on Jell-O shooters.
That was the thing after I had hung it up.
Okay.
Yeah, and Zima.
Well, I think we're going to hang it up right now.
Or Merlot.
So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
On Talks.
Peace.
I'm Malayna. That's Reverend Mike.
Have a great week.
Happy Valentine's
Peace
Day.
And blessings. Happy Valentine's Day. Be a lover of humanity.
And radical self-love.
Radical.